Las Vegas shooting. On the night of October 1st, 2017, at the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival in Las Vegas, Nevada, the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history unfolded in just 10 harrowing minutes. From the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, 64-year-old Stephen Paddock unleashed a storm of gunfire onto a crowd of 22,000 concertgoers, killing 60 and injuring over 850. Stephen Paddock was a retired accountant and avid gambler with no known criminal history. Raised in Arizona and California, he led an unremarkable life, though his father had once been on the FBI's most wanted list. In the years leading up to the attack, Paddock grew increasingly isolated, amassing an arsenal of firearms, many modified for rapid fire, without raising suspicion. His motive remains frustratingly opaque. Using meticulously planned logistics, Paddock brought 23 rifles into his hotel suite. He smashed out the windows, mounted cameras in the hallway, and recorded himself during the massacre. As the chaos unfolded below, frantic 911 calls flooded in. Police quickly located his room, but found him dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound when they breached the door. With the shooter dead, there was no trial, only a sprawling investigation. The FBI concluded Paddock acted alone, driven by a complex mix of grievance and obsession with notoriety. Yet no ideological motive was ever confirmed. In the aftermath, survivors were left grappling with trauma, and the nation once again asked, how could this happen, and why? Orlando nightclub shooting. On June 12, 2016, just after 2 a.m., gunfire erupted inside Pulse, a crowded LGBTQ nightclub in Orlando, Florida. The shooter was 29-year-old Omar Mateen, a U.S.-born security guard of Afghan descent. Within 3 harrowing hours, the venue transformed into a scene of terror, the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history at that time, and a devastating attack on the LGBTQ community during Pride Month. Mateen had a history of erratic behavior. Raised in a strict conservative household, he struggled with identity and anger issues. Though twice investigated by the FBI for suspected extremist ties, no charges were filed. In the days leading up to the shooting, Mateen pledged allegiance to ISIS during a 911 call, though officials later questioned the sincerity and clarity of his ideological motives. Some reports suggested internal conflict, possibly related to his own sexuality, adding layers of complexity to the question, why Pulse? Armed with a Sig Sauer MCX rifle and a Glock 17 pistol, Mateen fired over 200 rounds inside the club, killing 49 people and injuring 53 others. Survivors described moments of panic, hiding in bathroom stalls, and using phones to say goodbye. The hours dragged until police breached the building using an armored vehicle. Mateen was killed in a shootout. With no trial, the investigation turned to his wife, Noor Salman, accused of aiding the attack. After a high-profile trial, she was acquitted in 2018. The FBI ruled Mateen acted alone. The Pulse shooting became a turning point in American discussions around terrorism, gun laws, and LGBTQ safety. To this day, the nightclub stands as a memorial, a place where love was met with hate and a nation was forced to reckon with the cost. Virginia Tech shooting. On April 16, 2007, the quiet campus of Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia, was shattered by a massacre that remains the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history. That morning, 23-year-old Seung-Hoi Cho, a senior majoring in English, carried out a 2-part attack that would claim 32 lives and leave a nation stunned. Cho had a history of severe mental health issues. Born in South Korea and raised in Virginia, he was known for his reclusive nature and disturbing creative writings. Diagnosed with selective mutism and depression, Cho had previously been declared a danger to himself, yet gaps in communication between mental health services and law enforcement meant he was never institutionalized nor barred from buying firearms. The rampage began just after 7 a.m. in a dormitory, where 2 students were shot dead. 2 hours later, Cho entered Norris Hall armed with 2 handguns and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. He chained the doors shut and moved through classrooms with terrifying precision, executing students and faculty members. Some died shielding others. Within 11 minutes, 30 more people were dead, and Cho turned the gun on himself before police could break through the barricades. Investigators were stunned by the planning. Cho had mailed a package of disturbing videos and writings to NBC News mid-rampage, outlining his motives and grievances. Though dead, he left behind a trail of horror and a system-wide reckoning. There would be no trial, but the aftermath forced sweeping changes in campus safety, mental health policy, and gun control debates across the country. The Virginia Tech shooting wasn't just a tragedy, it was a wake-up call, one that still echoes. If you think these stories are interesting, please like the video and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. On the morning of December 14, 2012, the quiet town of Newtown, Connecticut, was shattered by one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. At Sandy Hook Elementary School, within just minutes, 26 lives, 20 of them children aged 6 and 7, were stolen in an unfathomable act of violence. The gunman was 20-year-old Adam Lanza, a deeply disturbed individual who had grown increasingly isolated. Raised in an affluent neighborhood, Adam struggled with developmental and psychological challenges, including Asperger's syndrome and severe anxiety. After his parents' divorce, his mental state reportedly declined. He became reclusive, obsessed with mass shootings, and withdrew from nearly all social interaction. In the days leading up to the attack, something snapped. That morning, Lanza shot and killed his mother, Nancy Lanza, in their home, using her legally purchased firearms. Then, armed with a Bushmaster XM15 E2S rifle, he drove to Sandy Hook Elementary and forced his way in. Within 11 minutes, he carried out a cold, calculated massacre, targeting defenseless children and teachers, before turning the gun on himself as law enforcement closed in. Police arrived swiftly after the first 911 calls, but the damage had already been done. There would be no arrest, no interrogation. Lanza died by suicide, leaving behind only shattered families and a nation in mourning. Investigators scoured his home and digital devices, uncovering journals, diagrams, and online searches that hinted at his obsession with past mass killings, but no clear motive was ever confirmed. With no trial to follow, the legal focus shifted to legislative reform. The tragedy reignited national debates on gun control, mental health, and school safety. But for the victims' families, justice was a distant, intangible idea, lost in the silence left behind by the children who never came home. Sutherland Springs church shooting. On the quiet morning of November 5, 2017, the small town of Sutherland Springs, Texas, was shattered by the deadliest mass shooting in a place of worship in U.S. history. As parishioners gathered inside the First Baptist Church for Sunday service, a lone gunman opened fire with brutal precision, leaving 26 dead and 22 others wounded. The attacker was Devin Patrick Kelly, a 26-year-old former U.S. Air Force airman. Raised in New Braunfels, Texas, Kelly's history was marred by violence and instability. He had been court-martialed in 2012 for assaulting his wife and stepson, cracking the toddler's skull, and was discharged for bad conduct. Despite his conviction, a breakdown in the Air Force's reporting system meant his record never reached the FBI's background check database, allowing him to purchase firearms legally. That morning, Kelly donned tactical gear, loaded an AR-15-style rifle, and unleashed terror on the congregation. The carnage lasted minutes, but felt like an eternity. Children, pregnant women, and elderly worshippers were among the victims. As Kelly exited the church, a local resident, Stephen Williford, grabbed his own rifle and exchanged fire, striking Kelly twice. Kelly fled, leading police on a high-speed chase before crashing his car and fatally shooting himself. The investigation exposed glaring failures in military reporting systems. Although Kelly never stood trial, the aftermath prompted sweeping changes to how military criminal records are reported. Victims' families later won a $230 million judgment against the U.S. government for negligence. El Paso Walmart shooting. On the morning of August 3, 2019, inside a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, What began as an ordinary day would end in one of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history. A 21-year-old gunman, Patrick Crusius, traveled over 600 miles from Allen, Texas, armed with a Weser 10 rifle and hate-fueled intent. Crusius had grown up in a Dallas suburb. He was described as quiet and reclusive, with few close friends and a withdrawn demeanor. But beneath the surface, something far darker had taken root. In the weeks before the shooting, he posted a racist manifesto online, warning of a Hispanic invasion and expressing support for white nationalist ideology, clearly identifying his motives as domestic terrorism. Just before 10:40 a.m., Crusius opened fire inside the Walmart, targeting Hispanic shoppers. In a matter of minutes, 23 people were killed and dozens more injured. Families were torn apart. Children witnessed unspeakable horror. The scale of devastation stunned the nation and confirmed law enforcement's fears. This was a racially motivated mass killing. Crusius didn't flee. Instead, he surrendered to a Texas Ranger a short distance from the scene. In custody, he confessed to targeting Mexicans. His manifesto, recovered from an online message board, became key evidence linking ideology to action. The FBI and El Paso police quickly launched a joint investigation, treating the case as an act of domestic terrorism. In February 2023, Crusius pleaded guilty to 90 federal charges, including hate crimes and firearm violations. He was sentenced to 90 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. State prosecutors, however, still intend to pursue the death penalty. The El Paso Walmart shooting became a grim symbol of racially motivated violence in America and a devastating reminder of how quickly hatred can become a massacre. Uvalde school shooting. On May 24, 2022, in the small city of Uvalde, Texas, the halls of Robb Elementary School echoed with a tragedy that would shock the nation. An 18-year-old gunman, Salvador Ramos, entered the school armed with an AR-15-style rifle and unleashed horror in what became one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. Ramos had a troubled past. Raised in a fractured home and frequently bullied over a speech impediment, he was known for violent tendencies and growing isolation. Just days after turning 18, he legally purchased 2 rifles and ammunition, signaling a chilling premeditation. Before reaching the school, he shot his grandmother in the face at their home. She survived and called for help. At Robb Elementary, Ramos barricaded himself inside a 4th-grade classroom. Over the course of nearly 80 minutes, he murdered 19 children and 2 teachers. Despite 376 law enforcement officers eventually arriving on the scene, it took over an hour for anyone to breach the classroom, a delay that ignited public outrage and shattered trust in police response protocols. The shooter was ultimately killed by a U.S. Border Patrol tactical unit. No trial followed. Ramos died at the scene, but the investigation sparked multiple state and federal probes. It exposed grave failures in emergency response, leading to firings, resignations, and calls for sweeping reform. To this day, the Uvalde tragedy remains a painful symbol of systemic breakdowns, of warning signs missed, protocols ignored, and innocent lives lost in the silence that followed gunfire. Parkland school shooting. On February 14, 2018, Valentine's Day turned to horror at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. At 2:21 p.m., gunfire erupted, unleashing one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. The shooter was 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz, a former student expelled for disciplinary issues. Beneath a surface of quiet resentment lay years of red flags, emotional instability, violent social media posts, and a troubling obsession with guns. Cruz entered the school with an AR-15-style rifle, methodically moving through Building 12, firing into classrooms and hallways. Within 6 minutes, 17 lives were lost, 14 students, 3 staff members, and 17 others were wounded. Survivors fled in terror. Chaos consumed the campus. Cruz had blended into the panicked crowd and escaped, but within an hour, he was spotted walking calmly along a residential street. Alerted by surveillance footage and witness descriptions, law enforcement arrested him without resistance. In his backpack, extra ammunition, and a phone containing disturbing videos he had recorded before the attack, stating his intent to be the next school shooter. Facing 17 counts of premeditated murder and 17 counts of attempted murder, Cruz pleaded guilty in 2021. During sentencing, the courtroom heard gut-wrenching testimony from survivors and grieving families. In October 2022, he was spared the death penalty by a single juror's vote and sentenced to life in prison without parole. For many, justice felt incomplete. For others, the deeper wounds lay in the unanswered question: how so many warning signs were missed? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I've got more interesting videos coming up. The San Bernardino attack. On December 2, 2015, the city of San Bernardino, California, was rocked by a mass shooting and attempted bombing at the Inland Regional Center. The coordinated attack, carried out during a holiday event for the county's health department, marked one of the deadliest terrorist incidents on American soil since 9/11. The perpetrators, Syed Rizwan Farouk and Tashfeen Malik, were a married couple. Farouk, a US-born health inspector, appeared to live a quiet suburban life. Malik, his wife from Pakistan, had entered the country on a K-1 visa. Both harbored extremist views that gradually deepened in private. Investigators later revealed that they had pledged allegiance to ISIS in a Facebook post just before the shooting, though there was no evidence of direct coordination with the group. Armed with semi-automatic rifles and clad in black tactical gear, they stormed the training event, opening fire on Farouk's colleagues. 14 people were killed and 22 others wounded in a matter of minutes. The brutality and betrayal shocked even seasoned investigators. The couple fled the scene in a black SUV, sparking a massive manhunt. Hours later, after tracing their movements and digital communications, law enforcement intercepted them just miles away. A fierce shootout ensued. Both Farouk and Malik were killed in the exchange. Inside their rented home, agents discovered thousands of rounds of ammunition, bomb-making supplies, and a chilling trail of online radicalization. Edmond Post Office shooting. On August 20, 1986, the quiet city of Edmond, Oklahoma, was shattered by one of the deadliest workplace shootings in U.S. history. Inside the local post office, just before the start of the morning shift, 44-year-old postal worker Patrick Sherrill walked in armed with two .45 caliber pistols. Within minutes, he would leave behind a trail of carnage that would scar the nation and forever change how America viewed workplace violence. Patrick Sherrill was a former Marine and a National Guard marksman, known for his precision and his isolation. Colleagues described him as withdrawn, erratic, and increasingly paranoid. He'd been reprimanded by his supervisors the day before the massacre, and many believe that was the final spark. Sherrill had a history of disciplinary issues and simmering resentment toward management. That tension exploded into something unimaginable. By 7 a.m., Sherrill opened fire on his coworkers, targeting supervisors first. In a span of 15 minutes, he killed 14 employees and wounded 6 others. The silence of the early morning was broken only by gunshots. And then, nothing. When police stormed the building, they found Sherrill dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The Edmond massacre forced a nationwide reckoning. It ushered in new workplace violence protocols and transformed how employers viewed mental health and conflict resolution. And it coined a phrase now etched into American vocabulary: going postal. Aurora Theater shooting. On July 20, 2012, a midnight movie premiere at the Century 16 Theater in Aurora, Colorado, turned into a massacre. As the audience settled in to watch The Dark Knight Rises, a man dressed in tactical gear slipped through the emergency exit. Within seconds, the darkened auditorium was filled with gunfire, smoke, and panic. The shooter was James Egan Holmes, a 24-year-old former neuroscience PhD student. By most accounts, Holmes had once been quiet, highly intelligent, and socially reserved. But beneath the surface, he was unraveling. His academic performance declined, he withdrew from his graduate program, and he began experiencing intense delusions. Months before the attack, Holmes meticulously planned the assault, amassing weapons, thousands of rounds of ammunition, and even booby-trapping his apartment. That night, Holmes killed 12 people and injured 70 more, one of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history. Victims ranged from a 6-year-old girl to a Navy sailor. Some died shielding loved ones. Chaos reigned as survivors fled, bleeding and disoriented. Holmes was apprehended within minutes in the theater's parking lot, calmly standing beside his car. He offered no resistance and informed police about the explosives rigged in his apartment, a discovery that led to a dangerous, days-long bomb defusal effort. His trial lasted over 3 years. The defense argued insanity. The prosecution described calculated evil. In 2015, the jury rejected the insanity plea and convicted Holmes on all 165 counts. He was sentenced to 12 life terms without parole, plus 3,318 years. Thousand Oaks shooting. On the night of November 7, 2018, the quiet city of Thousand Oaks, California, was shattered by a mass shooting at the Borderline Bar and Grill, a popular country music venue filled with college students. Around 11:20 p.m., a former Marine stepped into the bar and unleashed horror. The gunman was 28-year-old Ian David Long, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who had served in Afghanistan. Diagnosed with PTSD and known to law enforcement for past disturbances, Long had a history of aggressive behavior but no criminal record. He lived a quiet, isolated life with his mother, his mental state slowly deteriorating in silence. Armed with a legally purchased Glock 45 caliber handgun equipped with an illegal extended magazine and smoke grenades, Long opened fire without warning. In less than 3 minutes, he killed 12 people, including a sheriff's sergeant who ran in to stop the attack. He fired over 50 rounds before turning the gun on himself. Law enforcement responded within minutes. As chaos unfolded, survivors broke windows and fled or hid in bathrooms. The first responders stormed the building, finding Long dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Investigators combed through his digital footprint but found no manifesto, no clear motive, only rage, trauma, and a deep-seated disconnection from the world. Thousand Oaks, ranked among America's safest cities, was left mourning, searching for answers in the quiet aftermath of unthinkable violence. Washington Navy Yard shooting. On the morning of September 16, 2013, the Washington Navy Yard, one of the oldest shore facilities in the U.S. Navy, was rocked by gunfire. Located in southeast D.C., what began as a routine Monday turned into a nightmare as 34-year-old Aaron Alexis unleashed a deadly rampage inside Building 197. Alexis was a former Navy reservist and IT contractor. Raised in New York, he battled a history of mental health issues, including delusions and paranoia. He'd been treated by the VA, but red flags, like hearing voices and believing he was controlled by microwaves, were never fully addressed. Despite a record of misconduct, he still held security clearance, allowing him access to the facility. Armed with a legally purchased shotgun, Alexis began firing indiscriminately at co-workers and strangers. Over 69 terrifying minutes, 12 people were killed and several more wounded before he was ultimately shot dead by law enforcement in a chaotic standoff. It was the second deadliest mass shooting at a U.S. military facility. Columbine High School shooting. On April 20, 1999, Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, became the site of one of the deadliest school shootings in American history. Just after 11 a.m., 2 seniors, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, began a meticulously planned attack that would shatter the nation's sense of safety. What began as a quiet morning erupted into chaos as fire alarms blared, screams echoed, and gunfire tore through the hallways and library. 18-year-old Eric Harris was described as intelligent but manipulative, prone to violent fantasies and intense resentment. 17-year-old Dylan Klebold was more reserved, deeply depressed, and often felt invisible. Both had experienced feelings of alienation and anger, which they channeled into disturbing online journals and homemade videos. Over the course of a year, they stockpiled weapons and constructed over 90 bombs, envisioning a massacre far beyond what ultimately occurred. Armed with shotguns, semi-automatics, and explosives, they murdered 12 students and 1 teacher, injuring over 20 others. Many victims were hunted in hiding spots. Others were gunned down in cold blood. The pair eventually turned their weapons on themselves inside the school library, ending the bloodshed but leaving behind a scene of devastation. As first responders arrived, they encountered improvised explosives and were initially unsure if the shooters were still active. Investigators soon pieced together the horror. Surveillance footage, journals, and witness accounts revealed a calculated, long-planned assault fueled by hatred and despair. Red Lake High School shooting. On March 21, 2005, tragedy unfolded at Red Lake Senior High School on the Red Lake Indian Reservation in Minnesota. It would become one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history, leaving a community shattered and searching for answers. The gunman was 16-year-old Jeff Wisey, a troubled teen with a history of mental health struggles. Raised amid deep personal trauma, his father had died by suicide and his mother was in a nursing home after a car accident. Wisey lived with his grandfather, a tribal police officer. Isolated, bullied, and immersed in dark online communities, Wisey's writings revealed a fascination with death, violence, and ideologies rooted in extremism. That Monday, Wisey first turned on his own family. He shot and killed his grandfather, then his grandfather's girlfriend, before taking the officer's police weapons and vehicle. Driving to Red Lake High, he stormed inside, opening fire with grim precision. Within minutes, 5 students, a teacher, and a school security guard were dead. Several others were wounded. Wise then exchanged gunfire with police before retreating to a classroom, where he took his own life. The investigation revealed no outside accomplices, only a chilling digital trail, disturbing messages, suicide notes, and online posts that hinted at his plans. Federal authorities scoured his internet activity, uncovering a haunting portrait of a teen who felt invisible, angry, and ready to explode. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot more interesting videos here. I'd greatly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. Thank you very much.